Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Ji Xiaojun with David and Chris.
Hi.
Well, I should say I'm Ji Xiaojun with Dr. Moser and Dr. Bo. Well, we have two doctors now in Crossover. Now, Dr. Bo or Chris is from the Capital Museum in Beijing. As today, the 18th of May, is the International Museum Day.
Yeah.
What is the theme of this year's Museum Day?
This year, the theme of the International Museum Day is the museum in the changing world, new challenge, new inspiration.
The first question would be, who are the ones now these days going to visit the museums? According to, say, the Capital Museum.
The Capital Museum belongs to the city of Beijing, and it mainly displays the history and the culture of Beijing. So maybe most visitors are from Beijing. Of course, we will also attract many visitors around China and around the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
When was last time, David? Yes?
I could answer your question. Some of the people going to that museum are my students.
All right.
Yeah,
All
I've
right.
taken
What
them
kind
there.
of exhibition did you visit?
We see some of the traveling exhibitions, but they have an exhibit of traditional Chinese culture, and they also have an exhibition of traditional Chinese architecture and the hutongs.
Yeah.
Which one of my students commented, they said, why should we go to a museum to see the hutongs?
Why don't we just go to the hutongs to see the museum?
Right, and my answer was because the hutongs are almost gone now. So the only place you would be able to see them is in the museum. It's very sad.
It's a joke to tell, but it's a sad story.
It's sad, true.
Yes, but I will tell you good news. Recently, we will hold a temporary exhibition about hutong.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, maybe it will be open at June. This June.
In June, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me know. I'll take my students to go see it.
Yeah,
Maybe the last chance they get to see a
Just now you
hutong.
mentioned many hutongs disappeared very quickly.
Right.
So it's very necessary to organize this exhibition to tell the people that they should take
Preserve
many measures to protect them because they are really the symbol of Beijing.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's not only in Beijing, and Beijing has these hutongs, but in other cities and other countries, they have their own relics, their antiques, and their culture to display in these museums. But it seems, well, we might have lots of museums in these cities, but how many times do we go and visit these museums? We see them, but we just pass on, and it seems we're too busy always.
It's true. When I've gone to Europe, even some museums in the U.S., I sometimes go there in the afternoon and I find out I'm almost the only one there sometimes. And sometimes it's a really amazing museum.
Yeah.
Sometimes not crowded at all. In Washington, D.C., I've been to several the Smithsonian, and very often very few people in there.
Yeah, I think there are more museums in USA and European countries than China.
That's probably true.
Also, recently, China has developed many very beautiful and modern buildings of museums. But compared with the museums in the developed countries like Britain, Germany, and France, and the USA, I think Chinese is a little bit backward in this field. Yeah.
As a professional, what I'm curious about is, do you find it a challenge or a difficulty in attracting enough visitors to visit your museum?
It's really a big issue because, nowadays there are many good new technology, especially the IT field.
Right.
So it is more easier for the people to get information from
Online.
Online, yeah. So maybe you can Google almost everything. If
You don't have to go to these museums to get the information.
It looks that it is unnecessary for the people to go to the museum anymore. It's very easy for them to get to know the exhibition online.
There is a but, right? But as a professional, what do you say?
But the real museum is really different from the website.
Right.
Also, you can watch the exhibition online, but once you see the real core relics, it is more amazing, and you can get more information from the real exhibition, but not online.
Yeah.
What I like is the environment. It's always quiet. You can always, you have to turn off your mobile phone or turn it into the silent mode, and then you can really put yourself into that part of history. read all these
The labels,
labels,
some
explanation,
knowledge,
information about these antiques. That is indeed a learning process.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
And for things like art museums, also, you can get so much by seeing them online or seeing them in reproductions. But sometimes it's really surprising and amazing to see the actual work of art. For one thing, very often you don't get a sense of how big the canvas is, or how big the photo is, or how big the painting is. I've always seen these famous paintings done by an Italian painter of the Kangxi Emperor and the Yongzheng Emperor.
Yes,
Qianlong
I know
Emperor.
that a famous
Yeah.
he is a painter who is famous making the Chinese paintings, but with the European
That's right.
technology.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there are these three famous paintings of these three
Yes.
emperors, which I've seen in every history book has these famous paintings, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I went to the National Museum in Tiananmen Square that I actually saw these paintings for the first time.
Oh.
And they're enormous. They're huge.
But I
they take up that much of the wall.
All right.
And I always thought, because I see these in the book, I thought maybe they were this big or something.
yes.
They're
Yeah,
enormous,
yeah,
and
yes,
they're also intricate. And they're very beautiful
Right,
paintings.
right. Sometimes you may have many ways to see the masterpieces through the books or some other ways, but they are really different from the
seeing the real thing.
true
Yeah,
things.
right.
Yeah.
Now, what the national museums or capital museums are obviously the museums which are very popular among these visitors, but there are also some museums which are famous for some specific categories. So what we say, the feature museums, maybe.
Yeah.
What about this one? In Tianjin, there is one porcelain museum, and this could be a broke-up museum. That means if you break up with your partner,
Sorrowful thing.
if you saw, I don't know what they exhibit actually in these museums. It's like a breakup museum.
This is a museum of relationships breaking up.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we seeing here? A teddy bear?
Maybe all these
Explain it.
souvenirs that you've exchanged with your, former girlfriend or boyfriend.
The gifts?
All the gifts. The ones that you cannot bear to see anymore. Just turn them to those museums.
I don't think I want to go to that museum.
No,
It'd be too
maybe
sad.
some lovers who are enjoying the city life will go there, and so that they can cherish their current life.
Right, right.
What about this one? Why do they need a banana museum in America?
More interesting.
A banana is a banana.
But I have a question. If they display so many real bananas, how can
It won't be
they,
real. I don't think it will
How
be
can they
real.
protect them?
That's right.
Because they will be corrupted very quickly.
That's right.
So very interesting.
That's understandable because the clock is basically
Yeah.
their national symbol.
Right, the wooden shoe.
The wooden shoes.
I've always been a little puzzled that people could actually wear those. They're very
I've
uncomfortable.
tried it. Not
Not
comfortable.
very comfortable.
No.
But it is an art form.
It
so,
is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean,
Yeah, and I heard from my Dutch friend that only in the past time only the poor people can wear such kind of wooden shoes, clog.
once again,
Yeah.
it's not comfortable. And we have the Golden Museum in Colombia.
Yeah, Colombia.
You've been there. I've
Yeah,
seen,
yes, I've
I've
been-
seen some
I've been
pictures
there,
here.
yeah.
So show us.
I will
the
show
pictures
you.
you've
I will
taken.
show you. It's really a very amazing museum. It has a collection of more than 50,000 pieces of gold wares made by the ancient Indian people, mainly before the Spanish conquered South America.
Right. all
Yes,
right.
once I entered into that museum, I really was astonished because so many sparkling objects. For example, I take some photos. I can- yeah, very
Beautiful
good.
pictures.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this one is very interesting gold figure. I don't know who
This
it
is,
is.
yeah.
Maybe it is Indian priest. And this one must be the
door
Indian
rings?
ornaments.
right, okay.
Ornaments. Yes. Sometimes I think it reflects the god of the sun. Yes. And also the Indian people figures. And this is very beautiful. It's very huge. Just as we mentioned, on the photos, they look very small, but actually they're very big.
All right.
Yeah, yes.
So that's a lot of gold. Huh?
A lot of, and this one is very interesting. Is
The figure.
the figure, but it's symbolic. It has a symbolic style. It's a women figure, maybe also the
can see that?
priest.
Yeah,
Like in the shadow puppet.
Yes, I heard from the creator of the Museum of Gold that the Indian throw such beautiful gold wares into the volcano lakes, so that they can pray.
Get good luck from the
good
gods,
luck.
yeah.
Get good luck from
I can't
God.
wait to mention this. I like this one. A
Oh,
spy
where-
museum.
Yeah, spy museum.
Spy museum in Washington, D.C. Maybe lots of spies in Washington, D.C. We don't know.
James Bond about?
James Bond in London, I guess. And here is another one, a drainage museum located in Paris. Well, obviously in miniatures, not the real ones.
What are these again?
A drainage system?
What am I looking at? Are these
replicas of the drainage
looks like-
system
like,
in the old cities, and including the first one actually that was set up in
You mean
the
the
13th century.
the underground sewer
Yeah.
system, the sewer system
Yeah.
in Paris?
Yes.
What are we looking at here? I can't
But
quite
at the first
understand.
glance,
Miniatures, I guess.
Miniatures of what?
A drainage system of the pipes.
Oh,
of
the
the,
pipes.
at the
underground
first glance,
pipes.
they look like the market, supermarket.
yeah.
Yes.
They look like these bus models. What about this one, David? This is a toilet museum.
So you go to that museum, what if you need to use the restroom in the museum?
You pick anyone. Let's take a break. When we come
Take
back,
a toilet break.
take a toilet break. And when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion about, not toilet, about museums. You're watching Crossover. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Crossover. Now, today we're talking about museums, because today is the International Museum Day, and we're talking about the challenges in the changing world of these museums. About this one, because talking about these museums, and there is one policy that has been introduced actually not long ago. All these museums and libraries included will be open to the public for free. Is it a challenge, or I mean, how do you deal with it?
After the museums opened to the public free, they attracted more visitors than before.
Yeah.
And the public museums were funded by
The government.
the government, and so they are supported by the
Taxpayers.
taxpayers.
But the original ticket prices probably didn't help that much to defray the funds, right? The original tickets weren't that expensive anyway.
What was the ticket price?
Before I take the Capitol Museum as example, the price for entrance will cost the visitors at least 30 yuan.
30 yuan.
Yes, 30. And
30 yuan.
this is only for the permanent exhibitions. Yes, and if you want to visit some special temporary exhibitions, you will pay more. Yes, 50 yuan. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about China, but in the U.S. and elsewhere, the cost of maintaining the museum is usually not covered by the ticket prices. It's not nearly enough. So you have to put a lot of outlay of government funds, or somebody has to fund the museum. In the U.S., very often, of course, it's corporations.
Sponsorship.
Corporate sponsorship, and some government sponsorship, grants, but usually corporations, and maybe not just one, but several corporations. And it's never enough just ticket price, but I think it's a great idea to have free museums, because obviously the museum should be for the people.
To the people, because they come from the people, and then should return to the people.
What about this one? Now, we're talking about these permanent exhibitions in these museums. They're supposed to be open to the public for free. But at the same time, I've also heard about this one exhibition in Xi'an. Very rare frescoes from Tang Dynasty. That's over 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago. Very vivid, all these paintings. That special exhibition will cost you 300 to get a ticket. So this is, once again, controversial to some, because you're saying all these public exhibitions, these museums should be open to the public for free. Well, at the same time, you're charging 300 for one ticket.
Wow.
And some are saying, well, we're talking about these antiques. We're talking about, you know, archaeology.
Yeah.
Well, they are only supposed to be open to these professional archaeologists because they could be very fragile.
Yeah.
That's from over 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
For the mass public, they may not have that knowledge of protecting these, you know, antiques, these frescoes. They could cause damage, actually, even to these frescoes. So there are two different points of views. What is your take?
I think this is not a conflict to the policy of free admission. I think the Shanxi Historical Museum holds this exhibition is very good because, you know, they have many beautiful frescoes from the Tang tombs. And they charge 300 yuan for the ticket. Of course, it's this price is very high, but I think it's reasonable. Mainly reason is for protection of the cultural relics. Just now you mentioned many cultural relics are very fragile, especially this fresco wall paintings.
Yeah.
And I think this exhibition is not special, especially for the archaeologists. They really for the public. If you can pay
You just go.
the money, you just go. If the archaeologists can't
money,
pay,
okay.
they won't go.
So basically, they're only trying to control the flow of visitors, I guess.
Yes.
David?
Well, again, you have to make a decision whether this is going to be for an elite few group of wealthy people or if it's going to be for the people. I don't see anything wrong with having some special exhibit at a high price if you're not concerned, if it's a temporary exhibit for a specialized group of viewers. We have lots of things like that where you have things like symphony orchestra concerts and things are usually very expensive. Opera. The average person can't go to see it, you know. But that's different than a museum. So I think overall, I mean, museums should be cheap or free.
What about this one then? The National Museum, located next to the Tiananmen Square and the very much center of Beijing, just to the south of the Forbidden City.
Yeah.
That's the National Museum, but somehow we've also heard about several very special exhibitions. Bulgari and LV, Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton.
Those exhibitions, I mean, this is really causing quite a debate. I mean, we're talking about this National Museum, and some say, hey, how come? How come you're now holding these exhibitions for these luxurious brands? They're supposed to be 100% commercial brands, and national museums are for the national treasures.
Yeah, I have strong feelings about this. I didn't know we were going to mention this, but actually the first time I took my students to the National Museum, it was we went in the afternoon because we thought we'd have plenty of time until closing time. And around, I think, 1:30 or 2 o'clock, they started kicking us out. I said, no, you have to leave. I said, what? Why? They closed at 4. They said, no, there's going to be this big fashion show exhibit. It was on that day that they had the fashion show. Oh. And me and, of course, my students and everything, we were thinking, what is this place? It's a museum or is it a fashion hall, you know? Because there were these models and everything, you know? And this left a very bad impression. I think it's a very bad idea. I mean, if it's a matter of money, I don't know if they were changing hands, but it looked bad. I mean, it looked crass to be taking over. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to wait till closing time and have a big fashion exhibit in this beautiful museum space with the models and the jewelry after the people have left, I have no problem with that at all. Because it's just a space, right? But if you're actually cutting down the time that people can go to the museum so that this company can make money, it just seems wrong to me. It goes against the spirit of the museum as being a place where people can come that should have nothing to do with commercial. I mean, after all, you don't want to start putting Coca-Cola ads on the wall. Right? You know, here's a Ming Dynasty vase. You know, here's a special thing for the prehistoric China, and here's an ad for Motorola cell phones. You know, no, I don't think so.
And I also don't think it is a good idea to hold such kind of luxurious goods exhibitions in the National Museum of a country. You know, the National Museum usually represents the image of a country. But if you hold such commercial exhibitions, it really will do harm to this reputation, even to the reputation of this country.
But they have their say. They're saying, well, I mean, these brands are the brands with a long history of 100 years, and they also represent their, the capability in the creative industry. We're talking about, the creative minds behind all the success of these luxurious brands.
I think it's a good excuse to hold the exhibition.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I think museums will not say no to the commercial things. Around the world, many famous museums will actively do some things about the commerce, because their purpose is to earn money and to reduce the burden of the government. Just now, I mentioned many public museums were funded by the government. And in China, especially after the policy of free admission was carried out, I think government will have had more burden than before. So if the museum can earn money, can earn some money themselves, I think it is a good thing. And many museums will have shops selling many very interesting replicas of the cultural relics. Many visitors, after they visit the museum, they really like the exhibits. But it's pity that they don't have right to carry them back to home. So how to satisfy meet their needs?
Yeah.
So we just reproduce many beautiful objects and
All these
sell to them.
souvenirs.
Souvenirs, yeah.
Well, talking about making a profit, actually, also try to be commercial a little bit to compensate the cost they have to run the operation, to maintain the whole museum.
Right.
We have quite a few stories to share with you, but after a break, you're watching Crossover. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Crossover. Now, before the break, we were talking about all these commercial activities, some of these museums are involved in. What about this one? Once again, I'm sorry I have to mention the name again, National Museum, and there was a wedding, actually, ceremony being organized in the venue.
I heard about it.
Of that National Museum. But anyway, their explanation was, well, it's not open to the public. It's not like if you wanted to have a wedding ceremony, you can just have it, in the museum venue. It's the staff members, and they love their work so much, and they love the environment so much, so they applied to have that ceremony within the venue. It's kind of the benefit, they enjoy as the employees of the National Museum. That's one story. Next story, we have heard about the Forbidden City, because that's also the Palace Museum.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the halls, actually, of that Palace Museum was turned into a kind of salon, a cafe, or a kind of the luxurious meeting place for all these elites. That story was being reviewed to the public, and now that has been stopped. Here is another story. We're talking about another luxurious brand, Ferrari.
Yeah.
And this time it happened in Nanjing. They had a kind of, fancy show of Ferrari cars. The Ferraris was actually running on top of the ancient city wall.
Oh, terrible.
Oh, really? So you have
Yeah.
the cars driving on top of the
Driving
city
actually
wall.
on top of that.
Yes, Nanjing City.
On the top of the sea, we could see even the city wall.
The
See?
the wall city was initially built in the Ming Dynasty.
And the Ming Dynasty,
Yeah.
about 500-600 years ago.
Yes.
Now, all these stories are happening actually involving museums. Of course, I mean, the decision makers, some of them were being published by being removed actually from their original positions. And some of these practices are now being stopped. But this is still, this is something happening. Why do you think this is happening?
This is really a bad thing, because the track, we can find the track on the top of the wall city, the city of wall. So this event really damaged the cultural relics. You know, the city wall of Nanjing was very old. They were built at the beginning of the Ming dynasties, and in China, this is maybe the only one.
The only existing one.
Only existing one, yeah.
Still complete.
Still complete.
So, I mean, once again, people are thinking, well, we do need to protect and preserve these, antiques, these ancient architecture, but at the same time, if we just let them stay there, they say this is the dead antiques, this is the dead legacy. We try to bring in new life to these old legacies, try to find a new life for them. So maybe that's part of the logic behind all these decisions in trying to find, new ways of exploiting these venues, all these, old buildings. How do you see this, David?
Well, there's different situations. I think it's a complex situation. By and large, the problem is the encroachment of these commercial interests, into this other sphere of the cultural. And sometimes that can sort of work okay if for example, you see sometimes architecture like an old temple, and there are many temples in Beijing which are now being reconverted into commercial uses, like restaurants. The former, traditional Beijing architecture that's being converted for commercial interests. In a certain sense, if you no longer are using that original architecture for its purpose, converting it in that way can actually help to save it, because otherwise no one would put the money in to actually save it. You can actually keep it and renovate it and make it as good as it was.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. But then at other times, when you're going to do something like put a Starbucks in the Forbidden City, like they tried, or like this exclusive club that they wanted to put there, or imagine, driving Ferraris inside the Forbidden City. I think most Chinese and especially foreigners would say, no, we don't want Ferraris in the Forbidden City. But why not? I mean, suppose we could say...
Where do we draw
That's my point.
the line?
That's my point. I think it's very subjective and it's very hard to say. But the point is that the line is always being pushed by the big companies that want to get their name there. They want to get publicity. They want to use the mystique of these buildings, these architectures, or the National Museum to sell their product. So the pushing is always from there. And the pushback is usually from people who don't have any money or power, which is either the common people or these people who are interested in culture. So there's this push, but the push with the money and the brand names always pushes harder.
Tend to be stronger.
Yeah. So there's a risk of ruining or at least encroaching on the territory that we, almost sacred territory of the national culture and the traditional culture. So I feel funny about it. I mean, I like to err on the other side, which is let's just draw a line and say...